test. Okay, test.
Because he went somewhere and he said, do you have his signal that I can text him?
I told him.
He said if you want to start earlier, you can text him.
Okay. Now I think we can.
Coming now.
Okay.
2 minutes, yeah.
I think we can start talking in this room because it's not live yet because we are waiting for Aung Naing to coming in. He knows, but he just has something. Yes, but just like to explain that we use microphone because of the echo. That's why you may not hear from the loudspeaker. You hear our voice. Is that okay? People on the back, okay. We speak a little bit loud,
Yeah.
but because we do. Evening, friends and everyone who are interested who are coming here today. I think it's evening Bangkok time, but this is a live, so it can be any time zone in any place of the world. So then good evening, good morning, good afternoon or whatsoever. Because I know that there's many people who are interested on the situation in Myanmar. And I think many of you have read a lot about human rights situations, human rights report, crimes against humanities, war crime or whatsoever. But I would say that there would not be a lot of the books talking on the literary about the poets, written by, about the poems written by the poets. But actually our authors, they're not like, they're poets also, but actually they are human rights defenders. As you know, this book called Frontline Poets, the literary rebel taking on Myanmar's military. And tonight we are talking about this book. Before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Putini Kangkan. I am the director at the Fort, where we host the talk this evening. And with me is the two authors of the book. One here with me is Joe Freeman. He's been working on as a journalist at AFP for several years before moving in 20 to something, no, now as a researcher on Myanmar with Amnesty International Regional Office. And another one on the screen, another author is Aung Naing. I'm sorry, it's Aung Naing. Yes, Aung Naing is calling in from the US where he based at the moment. He's been serving as journalist also and filmmakers covering Myanmar's atrocity crime, the COVID pandemic, and other issues in these regions. So I would like to welcome both Joe and Aung Naing to talk about, because as you know, like for their background, and now they're talking about like writing about the poet book, which is unusual, right, for the human rights defenders, those who cover the human rights situation. What inspired you to like write the book, and what the story behind, or any good story, any sad story, or struggles, challenge? So, okay, Joe, please start.
Yeah. I think my mic might be on. Is it supposed to be on? Okay, good. Well, thank you, Putini, for that introduction, and thank you to the Fort for hosting us tonight. Yeah, I thought we would start. You mentioned in your introduction that it's sort of an unusual topic, and I guess that was I picked up on that because I think one of the reasons we wrote this book is because I think in Myanmar it's not that unusual, to mix poets and politics. We have a presentation here. Could you go to the first slide, Aung, or whoever is controlling the deck? And we'll get into a little more about the project. This is the only audience participation other than the Q&A. I'm going to throw a question out to the audience. If you've seen this photo on the left already, don't answer the question, but I'm curious, does anyone want to take a guess at what's happening on the photo to the left? If you don't have an answer, it's okay, I know the answer. How about the photo on the right? It's maybe a little more obvious. It's a group of poets protesting after the 2021 coup. We used the photo on the right because it's a very vivid example for the topic that we're covering in the book. The photo on the left actually came out after we wrote the book, and it's I want to say about a week or so after the earthquake in Myanmar. This photo appeared on social media just as we were getting ready to give our first talk on Frontline Poets. And it's actually a group of poets delivering aid in central Myanmar. It's a group of central Myanmar, like a youth poetry collective. And to me, you couldn't ask for a better example of sort of the theme that we're covering in Frontline Poets. And that theme is really that in Myanmar, poets are on the front line of every single economic, political, or social crisis, really going back around 100, 120 years to the start of the anti-British uprising in Myanmar. And that trend has continued up until the present day with many poets resisting the military coup. Some have formed armed groups, some have protested, and some are resisting in other ways. But we want to walk you through a few of the main sort of protagonists of Frontline Poets. We really focus on about 5. There are more poets in the book, but we focus on these 5 poets. These are sketches of them actually by a Myanmar musician named 𝐓𝐴. Some of you may be familiar with him. Could we go to the next slide? And we'll start with the first one. I think for anyone who is familiar with Myanmar poetry at all, or has seen a headline about poetry in Myanmar, frontline poets, etc., or poets being involved in politics, the first poet we're going to talk about on the left here. Could you go to the next slide, whoever has the deck? I don't know if that's Aung or... Great, thank you. I think if you followed this story even at a distance, you may have heard of this person, Maung Son Ka. He really is at the inception of this idea, which started back in 2015, 2016, when Aung and I were working in Myanmar together as journalists, writing freelance stories, and we heard about this trial of this poet who had written this poem and posted it on Facebook. I have a tattoo of the president on my penis. How disgusted my wife is. This is the most informal translation I could find. There are others. He was arrested, charged with defaming the Myanmar president at the time, named Thein Sein, and he went on trial. These are photos from his trial. Aung and I covered that trial for about 6 months. He was convicted, sentenced to time served, and released. But I think it was, at least for me, a kind of eye-opening, it was eye-opening into the world of Myanmar poetry and how it can play such a outsized role. I mean, there were people covering this trial. I just couldn't think of this happening in another country, certainly not my country. So that always stayed with me. We wrote a story, we sort of, you move on as you do. And then after the coup, Son Ka, who continued to be an activist, he started a freedom of expression organization called Atan, Voice. And after the coup, like many people, he protested. And then he made a very, again, what some might think unusual decision for a poet, but which I guess we argue is not unusual. He started his own armed group called the Burma People's Liberation Army. If you could go to the next slide. We wanted to explore in the book how the person that you saw in the previous photo could become the person that you see in this photo, head of an armed group, but who still, as the quote at the center of the screen shows you, he still believes in his identity as a poet. You know, he hasn't lost that, and that's still quite important to him. And I just want to throw to Aung, just if you wanted to add a few remarks about your sort of relationship with Songkhao, or because you knew him back when he was just an activist, what has it been like to sort of watch him change over the years into what he is, has become now? If you're there.
Can you please mute the microphone the more out count? Because it's not going to be echoing.
I muted mine.
Off the mic, right?
So, yeah, the first time I met him was around, there were some religious conflicts, and I met him as a interfaith activist. So we both involved in interfaith campaign called Pray for Myanmar. So that was the first time I met him. So Songkhao brought attention of many activists, many people in the campaign, because he wrote a very powerful poem about the religious conflict happened in Mekhtila in 2013. And then he was in jail. I became a journalist, and then he was arrested for his poem. And he founded a dam, you know. So of course we initially were friends, and then he's my source for I don't know, many years. And in the beginning of the coup, in early February 2021, I was following him for some documentaries, some short documentaries, and then at one point he disappeared. I didn't know that he was about to found an army, and then later on social media I heard that he founded an army. And then I and Joe had a conversation about working on this book, and then I connected him. And then I'm also working on a film, and these are the photos. I followed him in Korean, in many other areas in Myanmar. So yeah, he still considers that his main identity is poet all the time. Right? So he said that in several times. Yeah. So back to you.
Maybe you can stop sharing the screen.
Okay, thanks Aung. And I think we're told by the technical arrangement here that if you could stop sharing your screen, that might...
When he speaks.
When you speak, sorry.
So then you can
Because then I think it'll switch naturally back to you. Okay, right, so as Aung said, we were talking about Songkhao because we had this relationship with him. We've known him for several years. We thought this sort of metamorphosis, the first section of the book is called Metamorphosis. So his metamorphosis was something really, really interesting and worth exploring. But we didn't want to just focus on him. We wanted to kind of broaden the story out because obviously there are many poets in Myanmar, and there are many poets who are involved in resistance to the military. And we sort of decided to pick people who almost embodied different versions of what we call the frontline poet. So you have Songkhao here, who I think embodies very obviously maybe the concept of the frontline poet you have in your mind, and that's on the front of the book, which is someone in a uniform who writes poetry, who also is involved in war. But if you read the book, I think you may be surprised that there are other kinds of frontline poets that we also really wanted to we thought were equally as important in terms of what they were doing. And that leads me to the next poet. Someone, again, I think if you know anything about Myanmar poetry or have read about it, you may have heard of him as well. 𝐷𝐴 he's a Central Myanmar poet. And he was killed in a protest not long after the coup on March 3rd, 2021, on the streets of Moniwa in 𝐓𝐡𝐞 region. And in terms of what kind of frontline poet he is, I thought of him, as we wrote this, as a frontline protest poet. It's possible, of course, he would have joined an armed group had he lived. We don't know, but his life ended as a frontline protester and a frontline protest poet. And what's kind of extraordinary about his story, to me at least, is you could almost watch him, you could almost watch what was happening to him and watch where he was going in real time. Because in the months of February and March, shortly after the coup, he started posting these short poems on Facebook. And these short poems became kind of almost like anthems to the protest movement. And to this day, I think protesters in Myanmar, if you talk about 𝐷𝐴 or say quote some of his poetry, they will remember it. It has kind of lived on. This is a very kind of famous line that I think was almost revolutionary in itself, because in Myanmar it's such a fractured place and people living in different places representing different groups. And here's someone coming out in the middle of this sort of burgeoning revolution and saying, I'll sacrifice my life for you, for what we all believe in, what's happening. And he did that. So it was sort of hauntingly prescient that he wrote these poems, these short poems, about this. And he was a student activist before this. He had been in jail for over a year as part of a sort of student march demanding education reforms in Myanmar. So it's not like he was new to activism, but he used his poetry to, I think, fire people up, to inspire people. And to this day, I think it still inspires people. We're not going to kind of read from all of his poems, but I just wanted to read a few snatches. This is, if you have the book, it's on page 93. So these are just snatches from different poems, but I think they really kind of capture the essence of what 𝐷𝐴 was getting at. The first one is in response to some of the early violence against protesters, people being killed, international community not doing much. And so he wrote, "Before the revolution blooms, from the cracked skull on the road, are there any words for us? When confronted with devils, do statements still matter?" And so he was, this goes on today, he was kind of calling out international organizations, UN, others, who respond to, murder and, crimes against humanity with statements. And then he has these other, again, kind of I don't want to call them inspiring, but maybe they provoke people, they're sort of confrontational about, he's almost speaking to people who aren't yet involved in the protests or aren't yet involved in the resistance movement. He wants people to kind of join them. So they just read these two separate posts. He wrote, this is just a small post, "Don't be indecisive. The detonator of the revolution is just you or me." So every single person can play a part in this resistance movement. You don't have to be an important person or have connections. And then another one, this is March 2nd, the day before he was killed. He uploaded this on Facebook. "Don't utter a word that will undermine this job. Don't think a thought that will undermine this job. The job at hand is not just for one party or one organization. this job has to do with the future of the entire human race. So you can see he's raising the stakes quite dramatically, and the next day he was shot and killed at a protest in Moniwa. And his death really resonated not just among the protest movement, but of course among other poets. And that kind of brings us to the third poet. If you could switch to the next slide. And I think Aung is going to introduce Yo Aunt Min.
So, she is from Myanmar. She is from the same town as 𝐷𝐸𝐧𝐭𝐲𝐢. So she had inspiration from 𝐷𝐸𝐧𝐭𝐲𝐢. She had some inspiration from 𝐷𝐸𝐧𝐭𝐲𝐢, which shows that and 𝐷𝐸𝐧𝐭𝐲𝐢, they're like friends. So Yo's not like friends with 𝐷𝐸𝐧𝐭𝐲𝐢, but of course they know each other. And Jo became a student activist, and she served for the Myanmar Student Union, and she's an environmental activist as well. And after the protest, she joined the BPLA, and she was always taking care of animals and trees and any people around her. So the little puppy that she's holding is actually my puppy. So she's with me in the US even now. So this was our first day meeting this puppy. So we rescued this puppy from 𝐷𝐸𝐴, which is like 100 miles away from Yangon. So she hates guns. So she told me once, bro, I don't want to hold a gun. I'm not sure. So you join BPLA, why don't you hold a gun? And she is one of the highest position commanders in the BPLA. She's the political commander, or chief political officer of the BPLA. So that means she has to deal with other allies, other ethnic armed groups. So she's only 27 or 28. It's a lot of things on her. And now she's serving in Central Myanmar. We have so she's also one of the characters in the film that I'm working on, and we have captured her reading a poem. It is called "A Desire Going to War." So shall we play the poem? So there is a video that we'd like to share. That you is reading a poem, and also some of our videos.
This poem is also in the book. I think you can share the video.
Aung, so you can share the video and yes, and put the video on the screen. It's not on the screen yet. Okay.
你有米嘞，我接出来，他们我话啥？我不要你嘞，今年呀，年前一切看门看大路，不拉萨里头嘞，米修这些呀，我这个人呢，没讲对了，我这个人有了，刚刚对。如果你能帮我做来，你真的得看，天下来来嘞，我个当前原来里头，如果心里家对了。所以呢，雷国流，所以小军比，小你呢，不比张老爷爷那种担心的。张那当然那个，你们啊，关抓的呢，他们不打呀。他不为了担心关系，这个老为了差异关系，他还弄出一样。那这可能是这种爱国原的，俺用啊变成的。就看出来。လက်ရှိဒုက္ခကပဲအကြီးဆုံးလို့ထင်မြင်စေမိတဲ့ပုံရောက်မှမှုတွေဟုတ်လားတို့ပဲအမြင်ဒုက္ခတွေကပုံပုံကြီးလာတယ်ဒီချက်ဆိုတဲ့ဘဝတော့မရှိတော့ဘူးဆိုပြီးကြီးလိုက်တာအခြေအနေတွေကတိုးပြီးသားဆိုတာရောမနဲ့တန်တဲ့ရိတ်ခါမကျန်တော့ဘူးဟောနောက်တစ်နေ့ရောက်ပြီမနေ့ကနေရာမှာမရှိတော့ဘူးကြောင်ကူလေးထိတ်ကအထီးလေးကျဲရည်လေးခင်ဗျာပေါ်ရွေးရှာတယ်ဇူလိုင်ရဲ့မိုးသက်လေးတခုခုကြားရဲကနေဝိသေတော့ဟာရပေးစွမ်းသေးရဲ့ဂျန်မီကိုလည်းနဲ့အုပ်ပြီးငါတို့အုပ်စုလေးလေတံနဲ့စကားစနီပြောကြစို့ငါတို့ကိုရှာဖွေနေတဲ့လူတွေဟောဖို့တောင်းရဲ့အလုံးမှာရှိတယ်စီရီတိတဲ့အိတ်ရေတောင်းတဲ့လူကိုစုပ်ပါခဲ့ရပြီးချောင်းလေးဆက်လက်ကြည့်နေပါရဲ့လားအရာရာကိုဆွလို့ခဲ့ရပြီးမှနောက်တစ်ချိန်အရာရာကိုထပ်မံဆွလို့ခဲ့ရတယ်ပြင်းပွားရင်စိုးစုပ်မောပန်းရင်နဲ့ချက်ဖို့တစားတွေကိုတက်စင်ကြစို့မနဲ့ထံကိုတွေးနဲ့အပေါ်ကိုမကြည့်နဲ့ဘာဒီမို့စီးကြလာတဲ့ဘိုးရည်စံလေးတွေကရေငတ်ပြီးတောက်လိုက်တယ်ခမောစာလာမှုကြောင့်တစုံတယောက်နဲ့ရန်ဆောင်ရလိမ့်မယ်လို့တွေးဘူးသလားတကယ်ငတ်တော့မှသိတယ်ငါတို့ကဘာမှလေဘသူ့ဘိုးမှငါ့မို့ချစ်စေမခံစားစေချင်တော့ပါဒါပေမဲ့တော့ကောင်ရပုံပဲရှာနာပြီးများမှသာဒီအတမာတက်ပြီးကျန်းလာတယ်လားအခုဆိုကွာမနေ့ကဒီနေရာကခွာရမယ်ဆိုတဲ့အမိန့်လာလဲစိတ်မပြတ်ပြီးတော့ကျော်ဝိတ်ကပြင်ထားပြီးသားအသားကျနေတဲ့နေရာကကိုအချိန်ကြီးစွန့်ခွာဖို့အသားကျတယ်တဘောအလုံးစိတ်ရေးရှောင်နေရတဲ့ငါတို့မောင်နှမတိုင်းရင်းသားတွေဆိုဘလောက်တန်မာလိုက်လဲပြီးတော့ငါတို့အမာတွေကိုဘလောက်မုန်းလိုက်လဲအဲ့ကျင်းမှာခွဲကြည့်စရာတစ်ခုခုများပါနေသေးလားပဲကြည်ခွဲစရာကြီးရှိပါပဲချက်တောင်းဝါရုံလေးရဲ့အတွက်စစ်သေးကိုအော်မြင်တတ်မိကိုစီမှာမိဘနဲ့တွေဆွဲချန်နေတဲ့ဖလန်တယ်လေးရဲ့အမေးတဲ့ကြံပါတော့တယ်မိုးစစ်စစ်မင်းနာရက်ပေါင်း40ရှိပေါ့ဘယုံတို့တွေမှာလမ်းပြဖို့တိတ်လွယ်တာပဲမြို့ကတော့မစ္စည်းအောက်ကအပြောင်းမခံချင်တော့ဘူးပဲမိုးလေကင်းစင်တဲ့ညနေမျိုးဆိုမောင်ရင်တန်းတဲ့အခါခဝဝရလမ်းမြင်ရတဲ့မီးရောင်တန်းလေးတွေစီဒီလိုကသွားကြည့်ရမီးရရှိလူတွေလည်းရှိမှာပဲနော်တယ်လီဖုန်းဆက်ရမှာငါခွေလေးတော့အကြောင်းပြောပြနေရင်မှသူတို့နာမည်တွေကိုမေးရုံနဲ့ကြောင့်တတိရတယ်ဥပ္ပကိုဇက်တိုက်တိုက်ခဲတဲ့ချုပ်တွေမှာအဖြစ်မရှိဘူးအစိတ်မရှိဘူးမေးရထားတဲ့ဘုန်းဆောင်လေးကိုပြန်ဆန်းလိုက်ငါတို့မျိုးစိတ်ကိုပြစ်ရှိတယ်အစိတ်ရှိတယ်ကြည်အဲ့ဆိုလို့လူတွေနဲ့ပန်းနေများများဆိုဘလောက်ကောင်းလိုက်လဲပိတ်ပိတ်အောင်ဖြူနေတဲ့တင်းတင်းမြင့်ကြီးကိုကြည့်ပြီးမင်းဘာမြင်ရတယ်လဲခုခုမြင်ကြလို့မှမဟုတ်တာတကယ်တော့အသက်ရှင်ရည်တည်နိုင်မှုဆိုရင်နှစ်ပေါင်းများစွာယုံကြည်တန်ဖိုးထားမှုလေးတွေကိုလည်းကိုယ်တိုင်စားသုံးကြည့်ကြရတယ်တကယ်တော့ငါအန်ဒီရဲ့အရှိဆုံးသက်စီးနိုင်ရမြင့်တရားဝါကောင်ကြီးပါငါ့ကိုအလေးမပြုကြပါနဲ့ညစ်တွေကိုစားတယ်ဝါးတွေနဲ့ရောက်ရအရက်တဲဆောက်ရတယ်ဝါးတွေကစားရတာအိမ်ဆောက်ရတာငါတို့လူအိမ်တွေကိုပေးစွမ်းနိုင်တဲ့အပင်မျိုးလိုပဲမြင်သလားငါတို့အသုံးချစရာအမျက်ထုတ်စရာတတ်တော်ဝါတွေကအရာတစ်ခုပေါ့ကွာဟုတ်လား sorry brother ဒီငါဘော်ရာဖြစ်ဖို့ bus မဖြစ်ဘူးနေရရေတောင်မရောက်နိုင်သေးပဲလဲနေပြီမလို့အခုယူဆရတဲ့အရာတွေကိုပြစ်ချခဲ့ပါတယောက်ကိုတယောက်ကြောက်ရွံ့နေကြပြီလားအဝေးကြီးကိုမပြေးချင်တဲ့သူတွေအမြင့်ကြီးကိုမရောက်ချင်တဲ့သူတွေဘာလို့မှယူမချစ်မနဲ့တဲ့သူတွေ ငါ့ကိုလေကျေးဇူးပြု၍ဘာတစ်ခုမှမစိုက်ပြထားရသေးပဲခုတ်ထွေရှင်းလင်းဖို့မစိတ်ခိုင်းပါနဲ့ဟောဒီမိုင်းပဲတွေ့တုံဆိုင်ရတဲ့လူသားကကိုယ့်အရာလေးတိစောက်ဖို့အတွက်တဘာသူပုံပေါ်ရတယ်ပျက်စီးနိုင်ခြင်းမှာအင်မတန်ဆိုးရွားပါတယ်ငါကဒုတိယလူပါမဟုတ်ဘူးမတရားမှုကိုယုံမုန်းခံပြစ်စိတ်နဲ့ကမောင်းနေတဲ့စမိန်လေးတစ်စီးရဲ့ပါငါကဘယ်သူမှမဖြစ်ချင်ပဲဘယ်သူမှလေးစားအားကြတာမျိုးရှိမနေတဲ့တိမ်တွေကိုဘေးမောသူပါပြောရမယ်ဆိုရင်ကွာဒဇက်မိတ်ကနေကြာလာတဲ့ဘိုးရင်စက်ကလေးတွေကိုစူးစိစီးစင်းစေတဲ့ရေရှောင်းလေးတကတရားတွေကိုတည်စီနိုင်တဲ့လက်နက်တွေကန်ဆောင်မဲ့အပေတဲ့သို့သောစဉ်းစားပြီးပုံမျိုးတွေရှိဖို့လိုပါတယ်ကျွန်တော်ဖြည့်ရှင်းတဲ့တော့လို့ဖြေပါဖြူအပ်24ရက်6လ2021
Thanks, Aung. Thanks, Aung. Just in case you missed that. That is the longest poem in the book. I know it was quite long, but and when we were putting this together, we actually thought, well, maybe it's, people don't want to read a poem that long, but in the end, that's really one of our favorite poems in the book because I think it speaks to something else that I think maybe hopefully you'll take away if you read it, is that the kinds of poems that people in it are writing are not necessarily about fiery war poems or something you might expect about wanting to kill others or maim others or hurt others. They're really about people trying to hold on to their humanity despite what is happening to them and what they're involved in. And I think you'll be surprised to find that a lot of the poems are really quite intimate and quite personal, and in some sense, not even about war. And I think that's because, these are human beings who want to go back to their lives. They didn't want to be doing any of this. They didn't want to be in armed groups or fighting or picking up a gun. They want to be with their friends in Yangon or wherever they're from and writing poetry and going to readings. And so I think this is a way of them holding on to who they were while also processing what they're going through in real time. And Yo herself is still on the front line. She not too long ago she was in a house where an airstrike hit about 50 feet away. So I mean she's this is quite real for her, and yet she's still writing poems like that are extremely personal, extremely intimate, and extremely forthcoming. The last two poets in the book are two men, one named Linka, and the next slide is his name is Amon. We kind of grouped them together in the section of the book for the reasons mainly that they were in the same place and kind of fled along the same route in December 2021 in a village called 𝐓𝐡𝐞 in southeastern Myanmar when the military attacked in December. They both wended their way, into exile, and I sort of see them as they're on the front line of Myanmar's exile crisis. There's so many front lines in Myanmar. There's the conflict front line, the earthquake front line, the refugee front line, exile front line, mental health front line, and they talk a lot about that, about what they're going through, how they're processing the trauma they've experienced. Linka, very early on, he's also kind of from around the central Myanmar area, sort of, and when we first met him, one of the first poems he wrote us, which I'm going to read the English version of. This is on page 133. Is kind of looked back to the early months of 2021, and I think it really, really captures the shift in Myanmar from peaceful protest to the anger that was taking over large parts of the population in response to the sort of the cruelty and killing that was going on. And this is one of the first poems he wrote to us. It's about that crackdown, and it's always one that sort of stayed with me about how visceral that was for the people experiencing it at the time and seeing what was happening to their friends. The poem is called "The Radio of Dead People." I'm going to read it in English. Aung will read a slightly longer version in Burmese. So this is "The Radio of Dead People" by 𝐓𝐴. Some of it's on the screen, but I'll read the whole thing here. The sounds of gunshots are crystal clear on the radio. You can even hold the blood, and the sounds are sticky. They shoot from the street. They shoot into the house. They shoot at the funeral of gunshot victims, and they shoot at the people in the funeral. They shoot at the infant in the arms of the father. They shoot the elderly in their beds. They shoot mom and dad. They shoot uncle and auntie. They shoot brothers and sisters. My dear fellow people, they are shooting at everyone. Your breath is their target. Those noises from the radio coming out on the street, together with the sounds of gunshots, together with the roar of blood, go back into the radio. They shoot with their machine guns until they pierce the insides of the radio. This morning is the funeral of the radio after it too was gunned down. And Aung, I'm going to turn off my microphone if you want to read the Burmese version.
Radio seasonတွေကတနတ်တန်တွေကပြက်သားကြည့်နေတာသူတို့ကိုလက်နဲ့ကန်ကြည့်လို့ရတဲ့အထိအတန်ကစေးပြစ်တယ်။ဓမ္မောကနေပြစ်တယ်အိမ်ထဲဝင်ပြစ်တယ်။အပြစ်ခံရလို့တေသွားတဲ့သူရဲ့နာရီသူ့နာရီဥဆောင်မှုတွေကိုပြစ်တယ်။တအိရှင်ဝင်တဲ့ကလေးတွေကိုပြစ်တယ်။ကတင်ဘောကပိုးဖွားတွေကိုပြစ်တယ်။အဖေအမေတွေကိုပြစ်တယ်။ဦးလေးနဲ့အတော်ကိုပြစ်တယ်။ညီလေးနဲ့ညီမလေးကိုပြစ်တယ်။ဒီလိုမျိုးများခင်ဗျာအားလုံးပြစ်နေတာခင်ဗျားတို့တက်ရှူတာသူတို့ပြစ်မှတ်ရေဒီယိုအတန်ကြီးကလမ်းပေါ်ထွက်လာလမ်းပေါ်ကတနတ်တန်တွေးတန်နေတဲ့သူရေဒီယိုလည်းပြန်ဝင်သွားတယ်ရေဒီယိုလည်းအထိဆက်တနတ်အကျွဲလိုက်လိုက်ပြစ်ခုမနဲ့တေဆုံးလူရေဒီယိုလည်းလာရေးတေဆုံးလူတွေကဘာမှမပြောတော့တဲ့အခါမတေဆုံးလူတွေရဲ့နားမှာခံနိုင်ရမဲ့သွားမရှိတော့တဲ့အတန်တွေကပေါက်ထွက်လာတဲ့အုံမှထွေးလိုက်ခုန်ထွက်လာတဲ့စုပ်လုံးလို့တိတ်ဆိတ်မှုဟာပဲ့တင်တစ်ထက်ထက်ထက်လင်းခါမတ်29 2027
Thanks, Aung. Thank you. Just move to the last slide. The second poet I mentioned, Aung, he also fled through 𝐓𝐴 and is also in exile. While he was fleeing with two of his friends, a guy named Soya, who works for a media outlet called Delta News Agency, and another sort of poet and artist named 𝐓𝐴_𝐾. There was an airstrike and 𝐓𝐴_𝐾 was killed. And Aung came back. I think he had already fled over the border, but he came back, and they had a funeral for 𝐓𝐴_𝐾 in the middle of the forest. And as you can see, this is a photo there. I just want to go over to you, Aung, because Aung actually met both Aung and 𝐓𝐴 shortly after they had experienced these things, after they had come from Myanmar. Aung, did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. In the left, can you please read your mic? On this photo in the left, 𝐴 was staring at the fresh grave of 𝐓𝐴_𝐾. his friend, who is a journalist, editor, and also a poet. And he was killed in an airstrike when the military raided 𝐓𝐸𝐾𝐲 village and around, just across the Thai-Myanmar border. So, so they were fleeing 𝐓𝐸𝐾𝐲 village. You know, they took shelter in 𝐓𝐸𝐾𝐲 until like mid-December. And 𝐓𝐸𝐾𝐲 arrived in the village just a day before the military raided. So anyway, 𝐓𝐸𝐾𝐲, 𝐷𝐸𝐾𝐲, and 𝐷𝐸𝐾𝐲, three of them, they fled together, 𝐓𝐸𝐾𝐲 village, with a lot of people, you know, like Korean people, the politicians, people from NLD, NUG, you know, they fled all together, like a massive group. And then they got to a village called Myanmar, and then the military airstrike. So they were running, and then they dispersed. So Soya and Nemo, they were together, and they were able to cross the border. But they didn't hear anything about 𝐓𝐸𝐾𝐲. But they slept on the Thai side for a night, and then the next morning they heard that 𝐓𝐸𝐾𝐲 and there was another person called OG. They were killed in the airstrike. So they went back to Myanmar village. So they went back to the forest. And even at the time, they were still like shooting, and the military was shooting around. So they sneaked back into this forest, and they arranged the funeral very quickly. And then, can you see the two headbands that is tied on the aim, on the pole? So these headbands belong to Amon and his friend Soya. They all have long hairs. So I met them at the border a night or two after this funeral, and their faces were swollen. So initially I thought, oh, it's because of, you know, they fled like a really terrifying airstrike, and then they lost a friend and they didn't sleep. You know, but then I meet more and more people who just fled the conflict. And then this is one identical fact among all those people. And later I asked around, and I came to realize that it's because they were sleeping on the ground like for around 3 weeks since they left 𝐓𝐸𝐾𝐲 village. That was mid-December, and then they got to a safer area in 𝐼𝐸𝐾𝐲. So it took around 3 weeks, and then almost all of them have swollen face. And this photo on the right was taken, I don't know, a year or two after this event, and I still felt like trauma on his face. So whenever I talk to Busuya or Koimon about this event, so like this trauma always reflect on them. Also, I filmed them in one of my documentaries that was released in 2020. That's how we were able to get the stories. Thank you.
Thanks, Aung. And in the sort of third, Amon and Linka are kind of in the third section of the book, and they talk a lot about, you know, the mental health issues they're dealing with. Amon, I mean, even before I kind of knew all this, when we met with him, there was something like, something very, he looked very, very tired, you know, like very, very tired, as if he hadn't slept all night. And I just want to maybe I'll end our presentation, and then we can do some questions if there are any, with the poem that Amon wrote about 𝐓𝐸𝐾𝐲. And sort of context, when 𝐓𝐸𝐾𝐲 was killed, there was his backpack, and there were some items left in it. You know, a computer, a passport, some small bills, and there was a small jade earring. And Amon kept it as a kind of keepsake. And I just mentioned that because it's kind of the theme of his poem. So I'll read this in English, and then we'll go to some questions. It's on page 152. And the poem is called, What Have You Left? You left a dusty jade earring on the birthday of the god. It is a new year now. If I dig your body up, intestines askew would shout federal democracy. The dropping jaws would break the donor range. What have you left? Regardless of how cold the wild snows are, it won't be as warm as your purple checkered shirt. Who would know that? How you brighten up as a son of God under the wild rubber leaves. Who would know that? How I tied my hairband in a wild cemetery. Who would know how I became uncomfortable? What have you left? Soya shouts, this is a poet. You don't need to reveal the order. Everyone salutes. What have you left? The little forest sighs. We had to leave you in the sunlight that crosses into the Thongjin River. Let's say it's fate. Our state is like ruffled hair and an unshaven beard. What have you left? We left a poem marked deep with a knife in the teak tree by your feet. So thank you. That's it from us.
Thank you very much, Joe and Aung for, I think, really touching presentations both on the poems and on the video and everything. I have some questions in hand, but since you are here, the audience here at the fort, so I think I would give privilege to those who are here to ask some questions first before I go to my list of questions. Or it does need to be the questions, it could be like the chair's experience, feelings, and if anyone already read the book, if you want to share your feelings or whatsoever, yes, the floor is yours. Okay, may I see 2 hands now, 3 hands. Okay, that's nice, and we need microphone, right? Yes. I mean, if you are able to introduce yourself, that would be great, but if not, that's okay. Also, if any of you don't want to be spot, you can raise your hand too in terms of like securities. Okay.
Hi Joe, I'm Tana, a journalist for the Bangkok Post. I have a couple of questions for both of you. Can you just give the starting and ending period of gathering all the information about the Frontline poets? The second one is, I used to interview some artists who fled to Thailand in the wake of the military conscription, and they are now they are apparently trying to establish their life in Thailand. But when I listen to your story, it is a totally different scenario. So do you have like a lively explanation why some Frontline poets, I mean, why do they a very high stake to the extent that they are risking their life to fight the military, and why some are fleeing and they are now establishing themselves in Thailand? And the last one, what is the response from the mainstream poet? I mean, how do they respond to the military? Thank you.
Can we get answer question first?
Oh, okay.
Hello, hi guys. My name's Logan. I would like to congratulate you first on the book. It's a wonderful idea to write a book about this subject. I think sometimes with Myanmar, you can read all the reports and the articles and the books that you want, but poetry probably makes sense of the situation a lot more than other things, especially now. So I have 2 questions. I think one for Aung and one for Joe, but feel free to jump in for both of them. The first one is that on the translation, for Aung Naing. So, do you feel like with the English translation, there were things that were significantly lost, or things that even made you feel like something was gained in the English translation? I would love to know your feelings about the two translations and how each version of a poem made you feel. And then probably more directed towards Joe, but Aung Naing, so obviously if you have thoughts on this, jump in. I think as people, as humans, we're naturally inclined to celebrate and enjoy and to like and love poets. But when poets enter this kind of situation, it's inevitable that they might do and think and change into things which we don't necessarily celebrate as much, right? In fact, I think the NLD government, there was a lot of poets in that cabinet. In fact, maybe Yi Mon, the defense minister, was a poet, right? Now, the NLD were not all that good, and some of the poets didn't perform good as well. So I was wondering if you have any thoughts about how these poets of the revolution might change in the kind of public perspective as time goes by, in the same way that the NLD poets aren't as popular perhaps as they were before, because they enter a very gritty business of politics. Revolution also a very gritty business, isn't it? Okay, thank you.
Hi, thank you. This was super interesting and a great way to spend the evening, so thank you for sharing with us. My name is Marguerite. I have a very simple question. I just wanted to ask whether or not the same poetry tradition exists within other ethnic groups in Myanmar, or if it's predominantly within the Burma community.
Hi, go on as a Minglawa, General Kusaima. Hi, I'm Sai. I'm a founder of Myanmar Peace Museum, co-founder, and also artist and curator who exiled for 4 years and who apparently not trying to establish himself in Thailand, FYI. And just a question is, when I hear about the death of 𝐷𝐿𝐲𝐧𝐭, it was really resonated me because I was working with, I was curating the works of Colorless Zone, all the artists collected group from Aung, and I didn't have a chance to see 𝐷𝐿𝐲𝐧𝐭 back then in 2020. But so it's a very personal question. If for security concern, if you cannot answer, it's totally fine. What happened to Colorless Zone? I mean, just are they still okay, or it's just 𝐷𝐿𝐲𝐧𝐭 who just passed away? That's the only thing that I want to know. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kai.
Funny questions. I'm sure we might forget. So unless someone's taking note, then we should respond question by question, I think. What do you think?
I remember most. I think, why don't you ask your final question, and then we'll somehow wend our way through them.
This is this is really important book. The poetry is important for the revolution in every era. But my question is 𝐷𝐿𝐲𝐧𝐭 is my friend. He was my friend, and when he got killed, another 2 female poets got killed at the same time as well. Do you have any plan to put female poet more female poet in future public publication? Yeah, that's my question. Yeah.
I will try to answer the ones that I can remember, and then maybe Aung, there was some specifically for you. So let me take the ones that I think I can take. If I forgot, just shout out. Hello. How long did it take to put together the material? I guess it depends on the perspective. As we said, it kind of goes back to 2015, 2016, so you could say it took 10 years, but the active kind of, when we actually decided to work on it and start making trips to sort of the border area and elsewhere, I would say maybe three years or so, start to finish. What we did is obviously we had a lot of material, but then we went on, interviewed a lot of poets. Some we didn't obviously focus on in the book. Also, your question about more women poets as well, there were some we wanted to include, one in particular, but who didn't want to take part in the project. So we kind of ended up with the 5 that we ended up in, and we didn't even think it was going to be sort of narrative nonfiction, and we thought it'd be more of an academic kind of, look at, this issue, poetry in Myanmar. But the stories themselves, when we did the interviews, were quite compelling, and they all kind of tied together. So we thought it would work well to just focus on each of their stories bit by bit. As far as the question, I think it was why some people have settled in Thailand are not involved in this. Well, I mean, that's in any kind of I don't know, resistance movement. Some people aren't involved and some people are. I can't really speak to why that is. I guess one thing to add to that is and this is something 𝐷𝐸𝐺 𝐾 said to us in an interview, that there are many poets who are not involved in politics. In fact, I think poetry in Myanmar would be the worst for it if every single person was a sort of frontline poet. I mean, you need all kinds of poets. So I think that's actually probably a good thing, at least for the poetry. I'm trying to think of the question that I think it was. Sorry?
Translation.
Oh, the translation. I can actually answer that one because we worked with a professional translator of literature who translates mainly focusing on translating into Burmese, but he's also translated out. And I mean, I think you may have some thoughts on the quality and what kind of emerged, but I just want to tell a quick anecdote. We did an event in DC, and about a month or two ago, and we read that poem, The Death of the Radio, in English and Burmese, and someone after, a Myanmar woman came up to us, we're in the question and answer session. She said when we read the English version, she felt nothing, like it was just, words. But when we read the Burmese version, she got goosebumps. So I think that just shows you the chasm that exists between the two. And I think Myanmar speakers in the audience, I don't know, do you agree with that assessment? Was it? Yeah. So, Aung, did you want to talk about translation? And because we also had a lot of occasional, I won't say tempers flared, but we definitely had some back and forth on some some translations. Because there were some times where he was always like, you're literally not getting what they're saying, in the translation, and we would kind of really have to go back and forth. So anyway, Aung, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Right. So, I work as a translator for conference, NGOs, all those events. But translating poems, even for my articles or even for this book, is really difficult. So that's why we both decided to get help from a professional translator. But of course, I also did a few translations of those poems. And even last night, I was editing the video that I just showed of Yo's poem, and I translated her poem already, right? And then I have to change a little bit later as well, it was when I read second time, when I read third time, fourth time, multiple times, then I found out that okay, they are this should be translation like this. So it's always challenging to bring the actual taste in Burmese for the English reading audience. So it's always a challenge. Yes, I agree to that. Yeah, but of course we make sure that I and Joe had a proper discussion. If this is if this really conveys the meaning of that. Because Joe's also learning Burmese. We have many signal conversation about Burmese language and poetry and sharing books. So that kind of thing as well. I also like to respond to the very first question from our friend from Bangkok Post. So it's about getting settled in Thailand. So for myself, I was living in Chiang Mai until 6 months ago. And Thailand is my favorite country, apart from our home country, which is in crisis. So we're very grateful to be in Thailand. You know, it's a beautiful Thailand. It's beautiful land. A lot of people helping us, but it is very impossible for us to settle in Thailand. It is very important. So before I lived in Thailand for the last 4 years, I visited Bangkok, Chiang Mai, or many other cities many times. But it's always hard. But then in 2021, we had no other options left. The easiest option and the most possible option for us is Thailand. So that's why we came to Thailand, but not to settle. Not to settle. It's like we were trying to get back to our home country from afar, from Thailand. Well, maybe people establish their business or their life for temporary, but our ultimate goal is to go back to Thailand. So I don't think like artists or journalists or even other human defenders, they're not like establishing their life in Thailand because we all miss home. But of course, maybe some people they're running business, they might try to get settled in Thailand. But our goal is, and I said it's impossible for us to get settled in Thailand because like visa issues, bank accounts, pink card, a lot of things. I experienced all those troubles for the last just 4 weeks, so it's impossible for us to get settled in Thailand. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there was two more that I can remember. If I left another one out, just let me know. I mean, there were, I think, 2 questions about why there weren't more women in the book and also poetry from other ethnic minorities. I mean, in the introduction, we kind of clearly spell out, for lack of a better word, the flaws in the book. It's not an anthology of Burmese poetry. It's not representative of all Burmese poetry. It's really scratching the surface. But I think one thing we did want to do, and I think was kind of the upshot of this project, is we're obviously writing a book about what's happening in Myanmar now. You will learn a lot about what happened after the coup, what armed groups exist, what human rights abuses are happening. But I would hope that you also, people will come away with an interest in learning more about Burmese poetry and exploring on their own, because there is a lot out there that we weren't able to get to in this book. If you're interested, there are 2 really good anthologies. One is called Bones Will Crow, and there's another, I think it's called Cutting Off the Shoots Won't Stop the Leaves or something, both by the same editor, Coco Tet. There is a little bit of poetry from a Rohingya poet in here. But there's been a lot of great work on Rohingya poetry, including I think a memoir by one of the more prominent Rohingya poets. And if you're interested in Rohingya poetry, there's Art Garden Rohingya. I think they're on Instagram. So they're a little more established, and maybe don't also fill the sort of frontline conflict poet theme that we're talking about here. But I would definitely encourage you, if you're interested, to explore. There's so much out there, and there's not that much that's available. I mean, I had this book in my bag that I got when I lived in Myanmar, bought on one of the bookstores on Ponsanan Road. It was published in like the 70s. It's a copy. It has dual Burmese English anthology going all the way up to, back from, I think, early 1900s to the 60s. That was kind of my introduction into Burmese poetry. But this isn't a book you can find on Amazon or in Thailand anywhere. You'd have to get a copy from me bootleg. So, yeah, it's not the easiest subject, I think, to get into too as an outsider. I think there was the question, Lorcan's question on what happens to poets when they sort of join political movements. An interesting thing is you mentioned Yimon. So we had met Yimon in 2015. We had gone to his, was it 2015? During the election campaign or right after. We had met him, we had interviewed him in his campaign headquarters when he won as a lawmaker for the NLD. He read some poems for us. We wanted to actually, for those who don't know, he's now the Minister of Defense with the National Unity Government. We wanted to include him in this in this book, you know, as one of the characters. It doesn't get more frontline poet than a Minister of Defense, but they declined. So I think that's a good example of, you know, he's maybe more politician than poet now, you might say, and that could be an indication of, you know, where priorities lay. I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's just like a kind of anecdote I had.
About the female poets in the future.
I even forgot. Kusai, I remember your question about the color zone, but I don't have any update about them. But if you want, I can ask to, you know, go in more. Maybe he has some information about that. And also, Amma, I remember your question. The question about the ethnic poets, right? So Joe has responded some, but I also like to add that. So recently, there is a poetry book from one of the commanders of 𝐼𝐶 Army. It's called 𝐓𝐴𝐞. So he released a poetry book. And also in other ethnic groups like, you know, Korean, as far as I know, Korean, they also have, you know, poetry, or like they also have songs about the revolution and also their freedom movement as well. And I'm sure other ethnic groups, they also have their own poetry. And plus, 𝐷𝐿 he also explored writing a few of his poems in Rakhine language as well. So that's what I know about the poetry in other ethnic groups. And Amma, I remember your question about like other poets who will kill on the same day as 𝐷𝐿, and if we have any plan on like including female poets. So I remember the story of 𝐶 𝐿, but we were not able to track her story. Of course, we really like to include her story. And also there are a few other female poets that we like to include. And I cannot mention their names, but and also I'd like to mention that so there's so many profiles of poets that we like to include in the book, but we couldn't do it. It's like there's some unknown poets, you know, it looks like they were diseased, they died just for a natural cause, you know, but in reality it's not, you know, they were deeper. So in the recent years, so many poets died, you know, some suicide, some just died for natural cause, but it's not just natural cause. It's like they were stressed, they were traumatized, you know, and then they died in like their 40s or like mid-40s. You know. So we like to include, you know, their stories. We also like to write about them as well, but we don't have any plan yet, to be honest. And Joe, back to you.
Okay, I think we cover questions from here, and actually it's related to what Aung Naing Soe just said about the traumatized and even people committed suicide. There's the questions that placed here asking actually about this, that how do you balance your emotional challenge, like working on this field. I think probably it's good for Aung Naing Soe to share, and also to your the question to you too, like Aung Naing Soe, when you see yourself more as an artist or an activist when you work on the book. I mean, or maybe in general, like what you see yourself, and probably for Joe, yes, again, I think in terms of like the emotional balance, I'm not sure. I mean, like for Aung, so of course, like as the Burmese, and I mean for Joe, who's working on this issue, also, if you want to share. And another, I think it could be another question is that what are the feedbacks from the people you interviewed, corrected information for those poems? Like what do they feel when this book has been published? Any hope or anything that they could visions for their things in the futures? And the last one is that what message both of you want to leave after this book has been published? Like, yeah, what you want to hear from the readers or from the society when they perceive or reading the poems, the books, and yes, this piece of work. Yeah, I think it's about 3 questions.
Okay, so well, how do we handle trauma? I don't know. I have no idea. But maybe if there is a trauma, the trauma is from not only this book, because both of us we've been working on many other stories, many other issues in Myanmar, So, but there is no like systematic planning of like trauma release or something like that. Of course, like I think I spend time with my family or like friends. Not much. Yeah, but I spend a lot of time listening to music. So I think that helps. But there is no like talking to like someone as a counselor or not like that. Yeah, and I kind of forget the other questions. So if you want to help.
I think the other question is that like what people that related to the books that you authors, like what do they feel after they knowing that the book has been published, and also what the expectation or what you like to see the reactions or the impacts of the readers who like reads the books. Yeah.
Right. Put books to poets in the book. I will send books to 𝐷𝐸𝐿 𝐾𝐢𝐭 They were happy, and I'm in touch with them. They like the book. I think they were happy in a way that they were recognized. Their stories were recognized, and the sacrifice of the poets were recognized. So they were satisfied in that way, of course. But we're not able to send the book to Jo at the moment yet because she's quite far. But we're working on it. So I think they like it. They feel recognized. So what do we expect? I feel like we want to write more profiles. We want to work on another Frontline poets book. I don't know, but I'm not sure if it's going to happen. Because we don't have any plan yet. But definitely, that's what I expect. And of course, it would be great, like if we can distribute this book to like all over the world, like many other countries. We had events in London and the US and a few other places as well. And the book is available on Amazon as well. So yeah, we want more people to read about, read this book. And there is advocacy and campaigning on Myanmar. Myanmar issue is not always on the front page of newspapers. It's always left behind. So I think raising awareness about what's happening in Myanmar by using stories like this, I think it helps. So thank you.
want to say anything else? It's up to you. 3 minutes. How to handle emotions and
about the I mean, maybe about the feedback that we've gotten. I mean, obviously, when you write a book about real people, you want them to have positive feedback. And as Aung said, yeah, we've been able to get the book to most of the people we wrote about. But even during the process of sort of the interviews, I think what came across to me was that people were happy they were being asked at all. I mean, none of these. Pretty sure, Aung San Suu Kyi is a little different story because he's a little more famous, but I don't think any other people interviewed these some of these poets we have talked to, and I think just being able to someone is coming, making the effort to talk to them. I definitely felt anxious that the book wouldn't get published and it would seem like we'd wasted their time. So yeah, that's really important to me that that they like it, and I've heard back from at least some of them that they appreciate what we've done. I mean, obviously the book's in English, and none of the people we interviewed speak English, so we're currently trying to do a Burmese version. So then we'll get the real feedback. I think there was one question about what message we want to send, right? Yeah. That's a good question. I guess I would say for me, Aung, maybe you can have the last word on that. But for me, it would be Myanmar is more than this conflict. Myanmar is more than its conflicts. There's a lot of books that get written about Myanmar that are kind of on the same theme about how horrible the situation is there. I'm not saying this is a big departure from that. But I think by sort of highlighting at least one aspect of Myanmar's culture, it's a little more hopeful. I think readers will be left with a little more hopeful impression. So yeah, go out, read some Myanmar poetry, listen to some music, listen to Myanmar music, look at Myanmar art, try to watch some Myanmar films. Because this is going to be around when this conflict is going to end, and that's what's going to last. So, yeah, I'd encourage people to do that. Aung, do you want to answer that, and then maybe we'll close?
Yeah. So this movement, it's like there are a lot of creativity involved in this movement. Like this poetry, music, and also really cool ideas about fundraising, and those can be used for revolution or education, even healthcare, and it clearly reflects the resilience of people in the movement. And at the end, they are all ordinary people, and they never want to take up arms. So, like holding guns is not their option. They don't want to do that. They just want to, chill their life, write poems, and be like anyone else. So I think that's what I would like to share. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that is the good timing that we spend. I wonder, Joe and Aung Naing, so you have any final words that you want to share with the people here and also on the live stream before we closing the formal talk, and then we open for the casual gathering after this. So yeah, Joe.
No, nothing much more from me. Thank you for coming, and thanks to those who joined online. This was a passion project for Aung and I. We poured our own money into it, our own time, and I can't tell you how gratifying it is that people come out and are here listening, asking great questions. So yeah, that really means a lot. Thank you.
Coming to this event and interest in our book, and we really appreciate the folk and everyone organizing this event. Really nice.
Thank you so much, everyone. The book is. I think we can finish live now.